India and Pakistan are at war with each other, with the Pakistan shooting down at least, and now it's verified, two Rafale fighter jets. They claim to have shot down five. The Indians, on the other hand, had a night of ridiculous claims on Indian media of destroying Karachi's port, for example, of destroying multiple other cities in Pakistan, of essentially some networks even claiming to have annihilated Pakistan. It's kind of cornered the Indian position a bit because the pressure now is on the Modi government, especially after news of the Rafales being shot down by Pakistan's J-10 fighter jets has spread like wildfire. To get an idea of what's going on between India and Pakistan, I'm joined by Professor Christine Fair, one of the foremost experts on the Pakistan military and its linkages to jihadist groups. You can Google her. If I start listing the books that she has written, it'll take a long time. But what do you make, starting off, what's going on in your mind between India and Pakistan right now, Professor?
Right now, we're in a really intense crisis, and it's not clear what the off ramp is going to be. Neither side seems to be seeking opportunities for de escalation. I think what makes this crisis really different from, say, Pulwama was that this time when the Indians wanted to respond to a terrorist attack that it believed to be sponsored by Pakistan, it struck targets deep in Punjab, which is Pakistan's heartland. Whether India says its actions are de-escalatory. Anyone who understands Pakistan knows that any airstrike against any target in the Punjab is not going to be de-escalatory by definition.
Absolutely. And this is the kind of messaging that we're getting from Pakistan as well. There's certain segments that are saying that you have your win, you have your scalp with the fighter jet being brought down. Why not de escalate? Why not an off ramp?
Right.
But there are many other dynamics within Pakistan at play as well. It's not just India and the threat from it, right?
Correct. If we were to sort of ask ourselves, like, why did Pakistan use its proxies to attack Pahalgam in the first place? Well, there's a lot going on in Pakistan. The Pakistan army is probably the most despised it's been since the fag end of the Musharraf era, and that's because of its relationship with and treatment of Imran Khan and the PTI. Munir is a different kind of guy. Munir himself is under a lot of criticism. The corps commanders are being widely ridiculed for their corruption, being called the Crore commanders. So the Pakistan army itself really needs a strong Indian enemy to get people to let go of their previous criticisms and rally around the Fauj. There's also been intense terrorism in Balochistan, which of course many Pakistanis believe has an Indian hand behind that. So you put all of these things together, along with the simple fact that the Pakistan army only has one way to show the Indians that it isn't compelled by India, and that is to launch these terrorist attacks. So you have a lot of motives explaining the timing for the Pahalgam attack. And so when the Indians chose their targets to include targets in the Punjab, this was a move that should have been taken perhaps more thoughtfully, understanding what the consequences were going to be. By the way, by all evidence, they didn't attack civilians. They attacked terrorist sanctuaries. They attack facilities where terrorists are trained and harbored and financed and so forth in Murid K and Bawalpur, as well as targets in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. So it's not that the Indian targets were not apposite. It's just that targeting the Punjab was going to have a particular set of responses that the Indians cannot control.
A few things you mentioned here, Professor. You mentioned Pahalgam and India accusing Pakistan or Pakistan based terrorist groups of carrying out that attack. Pakistan denies any
Mhm.
involvement.
It
On
always
its,
does. I find Pakistani
on its side,
Pakistani demurrals to be not something that I can take at face value. I'm sorry.
but what's interesting is that they call for an investigation, the Pakistanis,
They
and they're
always do. They
supported, and they,
always
they're
do.
supported by the Trump, in part by the Trump administration. There isn't as much enthusiasm as with the Indian position this time, is there?
So actually, I don't think that's true. I think that's just not the case. I think one of the things that we're experiencing, we saw this with George W. Bush. Whenever you have a new administration, there's this ramp up of learning about India and Pakistan. So the only new administration uh, since 9/11 that I've been covering that didn't have this ramp up time was Biden, because Biden had been previously the vice president, and he understands the Pakistan India scenario considerably well. So the Trump administration is new. All of the people who knew what they were talking about are gone, and the Trump administration has chosen a cabinet not because of its expertise on any given subject matter domain, but because they're sycophants. I mean, it's really quite a joke that we have a Secretary of Defense in place right now whose previous job was that of a Fox News host. So we don't have subject experts in these cabinet positions. Even George, I mean, I'm a Democrat, so I know I'm not a fan of Republicans in general in their policies. But you take George W. Bush. He had subject matter experts in his cabinet. You take Trump during during the initial period of Trump 1.0, he also had competent people in his cabinet positions. And in this cabinet, we have just a bunch of sycophants. So we have people, and we have a vice president that, quite frankly, is clueless, and we have a president who's clueless. So it's not that the U.S. has taken a position; it's just that the U.S. is incompetent right now. Marco Rubio, who is probably the least incompetent person in his cabinet, also has a dual role as NSA. He has taken a different approach, right? He is counseling de-escalation on both sides. It's kind of rare that you have an administration that is so polyphonous in terms of the different positions and voices that are being articulated over a crisis that's so important.
It's very interesting how you put it, and thank you for clarifying your position that you're coming from a or you support the Democrats in a one-off. But Trump is a phenomenon on his own.
On his
It's
own.
on his own, and there's so many undercurrents in this entire situation. And yes, there is a lot of psychophony in this whole setup, but you have people like Richard Grenell, who are also admirers or are coming from a George Bush era mindset. And he was in competition with Rubio as well for the Secretary of State position. But one of the things that he did, and I think we might be digressing a little bit from the topic at hand, but I think it might tie in, was the whole Free Imran Khan debate. And
Yes.
that is also
Yes.
an undercurrent in all of this, isn't it?
I mean, look, that was certainly, Richard Grinnell was definitely portraying himself as a PTI sycophant, but I don't think he's a relevant voice here. It's really unfortunate that Paul Kapoor has not been confirmed. Paul Kapoor was tapped to be the Assistant Secretary of South Asia. And I don't, I would like to believe that Paul Kapoor has some influence in this, but I'm not seeing any evidence that Paul Kapoor is influencing the positions coming out of the State Department. It's just really unfortunate that his confirmation hasn't happened.
And he was supposed to be replacing Don Liu, another
Yeah.
controversial character and part of the so-called cipher saga, you can call it.
I never saw Don Liu as being a controversial figure. I found him to be a competent bureaucrat. So I'm not aware of the controversy surrounding Don Liu.
Um, you're not aware of the controversy
No.
that led to the removal and allegations of U.S. involvement in removing Imran Khan's government, or that allegation.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about something else. No, no, of course I'm aware of that. I thought you were talking to some other extra South Asia conspiracy that
No,
I
no, no,
didn't
no,
realize
no. That is the
existed.
only
No.
conspiracy that is attached to
Oh,
Donald
okay.
Wu, and there's so many
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah, yeah.
cultures in all of this. And the other thing, Professor Feb, a lot of our viewers might not be aware, but you have been associated with this topic for a long time and through critical periods of the U.S. Pakistan relationship. For
Yeah.
example, during Hussein Haqqani's time, and the whole Memogate controversy. So there are these instances, and you are a key witness to all of this as well. So that's the reason.
Regrettably, regrettably, it's the
Regrettably, but you
artifact
are,
of it's the
but
artifact
you
of
are.
getting
Well, it's a
old.
footnote. It's a footnote, right? So it's also
Yeah,
about correcting some records. So you are a
yeah.
footnote in a lot of these debates. And you have people like Khalilzad, you have people like Hussein Haqqani, you've got deep state interests. There's so many layers to it. So please tell our viewers, like, contextualize it somehow into how all of this ties up with this current moment.
I mean, I think just the bigger issue is that, this stems from partition. Pakistan is an unsatisfied state. It is a territorially revisionist state, and it can't impose its will upon India militarily. And I might also add that India can't impose its will on Pakistan militarily either. And so Pakistan's military is kind of like an insurgent. You can't India can't defeat Pakistan. Pakistan can't defeat India in a all-out war. So, what Pakistan does to demonstrate that it hasn't been coerced or deterred or compelled by India is that it conducts terrorist strikes every so many years. We saw this in Pulwama. Previously, we saw this at Uri. I mean, there's nothing. The problem, of course, is that with each one of these attacks, India's military is becoming more capable, just as Pakistan is becoming more capable. And with every attack, India is being incentivized to respond even more provocatively. So Pulwama, when its missiles crossed into Pakistani airspace to hit facilities in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, that had been a game changer, because previously no Indian asset had entered uncontested Pakistani territory. Most of the skirmishes were confined to the contested territories of Kashmir. The escalation to the Punjab is really unprecedented. So, with each of these crisis slides, the crisis slides become more dangerous.
Very quickly, the role of China in all of this, because
Mm,
Chinese J-10s did play a part, and so did the
yeah,
PL-15 domestic long-range BVR, apparently.
yeah. Apparently, I mean, so China here has an interesting set of incentives, right? It has an incentive to let this conflict play out over a certain duration, because its combat aircraft, I mean, it's basically seeing how its combat aircraft, how its missiles perform against European platforms, right? This is an opportunity for it to see that. But it also doesn't have an incentive for there to be a full-scale war between India and Pakistan. So at one point, we're going to see China counseling Pakistan to take its pound of flesh and call it a day. I'd like to believe that the confirmed aircraft that Pakistan shot down would be that pound of flesh, but right now it doesn't appear to be the case. But eventually, China is going to have a more salubrious role to play than it appears to be playing at present.
Some conspiracies on Indian media. Well, a lot of conspiracies on Indian media. But one of the things
And Pakistani media, don't give anyone a
with
free
Pakistani
pass.
media,
It
well,
is
there is.
it's bakwas on both sides.
Yeah,
It's
that is
impenetrable.
true. That is true. But Pakistani media has also been suppressed tremendously over the
Yeah,
past 3 years by
correct,
a dictatorial regime
correct,
that
correct,
has crossed all limits of human
correct,
rights, of
correct.
suppression. So these are
Yeah,
facts.
yeah.
But one aspect in all of this is that China's role, especially from an Indian perspective, is that has an American angle with Donald Trump and the trade war with China and the push to move uh, production out of China into places like India. And then this flaring up, Pahalgam happening. So they're trying to
Yeah.
connect those
I don't I
dots.
don't I don't I don't connect those dots. I don't connect those dots. I think this gives Trump a level of sophistication that he's incapable of. So this is not a conspiracy that I particularly want to indulge. I don't think there's any credible evidence. The reality is like no one wants to have manufacturing taking place in a country that is a hostile competitor, and India is not a hostile competitor. I mean, the fact that that the United States has no ability to produce its own pharmaceuticals and that we're completely dependent upon China for its pharmaceuticals tells you everything that you want to know. So it would be natural that you would want to shift that production to India. So I don't think that this has anything to do with that. What's gonna what from the point of view of the ultimate manufacturers, it's going to be price. What is the ultimate price when you figure in these tariffs? So this is a conspiracy theory that I don't particularly indulge in.
Fair enough. And but there is an economic angle to this because they just canceled the IPL, which is like worth $16 billion or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In India, so there is an economic price to pay.
Well, there's always an economic price to pay. There's I don't so I can't again, I don't see much of a conspiracy here. I just see straightforward calculus.
Which is,
Well, it's essentially about money. So I don't see this as some big game that China is trying to undercut a shift from Chinese manufacturing to Indian. And let's also be really clear, it's hard to shift manufacturing bases. This doesn't happen overnight. So, this conspiracy theory just doesn't it's just not something I indulge, sorry.
finally, the broader picture. You've got India, you've got Pakistan. India is much larger than Pakistan. It has a lot more money than Pakistan. Its economy is like $3 trillion or something. Pakistan has an economy of $400 billion. It's mostly a Praetorian state which acts as extensions, marketing itself to the Americans, for example, with Bergman and the Pakistan caucus visiting recently, or to the Chinese, swinging between these two. What happens? Where's the parity? Or how do you move forward from this position? Or what is that position?
Well, I'm not sure these are necessarily germane because what Pakistan has shown is that behaviors that are not economically rational, that are not even rational from a straightforward security calculus, are justified by the Pakistan army for the purposes of its own survival. So the army, if I we could look at a whole suite of policies. So, for example, if the army really cared about its economic well-being, it should have supported economic integration with India because a greater economy would give the Pakistani army more resources, right? But the army doesn't choose that path because the army needs there to be hostility with India for it to justify the enormous role that it plays as the hegemon of the state and getting to hog all the resources. So if you look at a variety of decisions that the Pakistan army makes, it privileges its own existential needs over materialist gains.
It privileges its own existential needs over material gains.
Yeah.
That's a good segue to to leave it at. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
You look befuddled by that comment. You look
I
totally
did. Well,
befuddled.
I'm still trying to absorb. I'm still trying to absorb what you just said, and I think this entire discussion will take time to absorb because there are some hard truths and facts in it, and not just for Pakistan, but also for India, for Narendra Modi, because he
Yeah.
doesn't walk out of this scot free, so to speak, either.
He's doing a good job of it. They've completely denied the aircraft shoot down. And deny isn't the right word. Missouri has said he's been very clever. He says, we will talk about that when the time comes. So which is not a denial. And we have to remember, India completely lied about shooting down an F-16 in Pulwama. So, as much as grief that the Pakistanis get for being a fabrication factory, we have to hold the Indians account for its own record as well. And as you said, if you listen to Arnab Goswami, the Indians have taken Karachi port. The Karachi port has been destroyed. It's really quite astonishing what the Indian media is getting away with. And your average Indian has no ability to discern fact from fiction. I would
It's
say
not
your
just
average
the average
observer can't discern
Indian.
fact from fiction.
Yeah, it's not just the average Indian, Professor Fair. You have reasonable people from the Hindu, from Barkha Dutt, once upon a time was considered a reasonable journalist. When you have these institutes of the past, supposedly, spread outright lies and fictions to and hysteria, essentially. If you look at that
Yeah,
coverage, it was complete hysteria. How do you justify that? How do you move
yeah.
forward from that point? Like,
No, I mean, I've done a lot of India media, and I just have to push back. It's like right now you're spreading a lot of misinformation, and this misinformation is contributing to jingoism, is contributing to mass hysteria, is contributing to a desire to not look for de-escalation off ramps, which we so desperately need by both on both sides. We need people who are looking for and pushing for de-escalation off ramps, and that is just the opposite consequence of the way in which the Indian media has been covering this crisis.
Fair enough. Thank you so much,
Right.
Professor Christine Fair, joining us from Georgetown University and laying it out as we saw what is happening in Pakistan, the role of the Pakistani army and the Pakistani state, the role of the Indian state, and the role of the media on both sides. Tell us what you think in the comment section. Do like, subscribe, and share this content. Till next time, take care.